The old sky over the scrapyard was the color of rusted iron, streaked with violet clouds and the dull shimmer of falling ash. Every sunset looked like the world trying to burn itself out, and Terran was used to working beneath that kind of light. His hands were grease-stained, his back bent from years spent welding the bones of machines long since forgotten. Out here, in the shadow of what used to be the Skyfront Range, humanity's last frontier looked more like a junkyard of broken dreams than the cradle of flight it once was. He had been born after the war, after the dragons fell. The old stories said they'd been gods once, or close to it, soaring through the skies above human cities like living storms, their shadows stretching from mountain to sea. But the humans had learned how to build their own wings, machines of steel and lightning, and the sky became a battlefield. Nobody won that war. The dragons burned, the humans bled, and the sky turned red and stayed that way for a long, long time. Now dragons were myths again. The world had moved on, limping on mechanical limbs, mining scraps from what remained of the old war machines. Terran's workshop, if you could call a patched-up hangar and a half-dead generator a workshop, was the last stop for things that shouldn't fly anymore. He could fix almost anything that fell from the clouds. Broken gliders, sky shuttles, the occasional drone. But wings? Real wings? Those had vanished with the dragons. That was until the night the storm came. It started as a whisper, wind curling in unnatural ways, carrying a low hum that felt more alive than any thunder. Terran was hunched over a shattered servo core when the power died with a shriek. The lights flickered, his tools sparked, and outside, something huge fell from the sky. The impact shook the ground, sending dust and shards of glass raining from the roof. Terran grabbed his coat, a flashlight, and stepped into the rain. He thought it was another wrecked freighter, maybe a cargo pod blown off course. But what he found half buried in the mud beyond the ridge wasn't made of metal. It was flesh and scale. A dragon! He froze. The creature's wings were torn to ribbons, each membrane hanging like shredded cloth, its scales dull and cracked. Its chest rose and fell shallowly, every breath a struggle that sounded like wind caught in a canyon. Its eyes were closed, but even in ruin it radiated power, like a storm that hadn't forgotten what it was. Terran's first instinct was fear. His second was disbelief, and his third, strangest of all, was pity. He approached slowly, boots sinking into the mud, until he stood near the dragon's head. Its horns were chipped, its once golden crest dim under the rain. For a long time he just stared, until he realized the creature was watching him. One eye, enormous and luminous, cracked open, revealing a slit pupil surrounded by molten gold. The voice that entered his mind wasn't a sound. It was more like pressure, ancient, heavy, and aching with pain. Human. Terran staggered back, falling into the mud. The dragon's gaze followed him, slow and deliberate. "Do not run. I cannot chase you." He swallowed hard, unsure if he was losing his mind. "You're—" His voice broke. "You're real." The dragon's lips curled slightly, emotion that might have been a smile, or pain. "Once?" Terran's heart pounded so loudly he could hardly hear the rain. He should have left. Everyone knew what the dragons had done. The old wars were filled with stories. Cities turned to cinders under their fire. Skies darkened by their wings. But this creature didn't look like a god of destruction. It looked dying. He took a cautious step forward. "You'll die out here." "That is already decided." Terran hesitated, his mechanic's mind ticking away in the silence. "Those wings!" Shredded but beautiful, complex beyond reason. The joints, the structure. Half organic, half something else. Were those veins of metal? Could it be that dragons had fused with machines before the end? He'd heard rumors of biomechanical beasts, hybrids born from desperation near the war's final days. He didn't know what made him say it, but the words came out like a challenge to the storm itself. "Maybe not." The dragon's eye flickered. "You think you can save me?" He didn't answer. He just looked at those wings again, at the intricate network of silver-like filaments running through torn flesh, and he knew one thing. This was no ordinary creature. It was a miracle of biology and engineering, and he, one broken man in a broken world, was the only one fool enough to try and fix it. The next hours blurred together. He dragged what parts he could from the hangar: cables, patch kits, old fusion cells. He rigged floodlights, wrapped the dragon's wounds, and fought against the storm like a madman. The dragon lay still, breathing shallowly, its blood dark and metallic smelling. Every so often, its voice brushed his mind again, faint and strange. "Why, help me?" He worked without answering. When the storm finally broke, the horizon was lit by the pale light of dawn. Terran collapsed beside the dragon's body, his tools scattered, his muscles trembling. He'd managed to stabilize part of the wing structure with scaffolding and replacement struts, fashioned from shuttle wreckage. It was crude, temporary, but it held. The dragon's head turned slightly. "You are reckless." "Yeah," Terran panted, smearing grease from his cheek. "That's what they say. You smell of iron and smoke. Yet you work like a healer." He laughed weakly. "Mechanic, not a healer. I fix things. Machines. Broken wings aren't exactly my specialty." The dragon studied him for a long moment, golden eye glinting like a sunrise behind fog. "Perhaps." "The sky sent you," Terran snorted. "The sky doesn't send anyone. It just takes." Silence fell. The dragon closed its eye again, resting. Terran didn't know if it would live, but he found himself staying anyway, patching, cleaning, welding, until his hands were raw. Days passed. The dragon's strength returned slowly. It spoke more often, its voice growing steadier inside his mind. It told him its name, Varath. It had once been a guardian of the eastern winds, born before the first human city ever touched the clouds. When the war began, Varath had tried to protect the sky itself, but in the end, even the sky had turned against him. "The humans learned to make wings," Terran said one evening as they watched the lightning flicker far away. "Maybe that's what broke it." Varath's gaze was distant. "You built to reach the heavens, but never learned how to listen to them." Terran smiled faintly. "Guess you could say that." He didn't tell Varath about the others. The scavengers, the warlords, the raiders who hunted anything rare or valuable. If they found out he was hiding a dragon, they'd come for him. And they wouldn't stop until the creature was torn apart for its blood, its scales, its bones. So he worked at night, under tarps and silence. He rebuilt the dragon's wings piece by piece, fusing alloy struts to living bone, stitching membranes with synth fiber mesh. Sometimes Varath screamed, not in pain, but memory. The hum of Terran's torch must have reminded it of plasma fire, of the day the skies fell. When the last strut was set, Terran stepped back. The wings spread across the hangar floor, magnificent even in ruin. Part metal, part miracle. Varath lifted its head, voice soft as wind. "You have given me back what was taken." Terran rubbed the back of his neck. "Not yet. You still can't fly. The servos need to sync with your muscle signals and, well, you'll have to learn to trust them again." The dragon's gaze lingered on him. "You sound as if you've done this before." "Not with dragons," Terran said, smiling crookedly. "But I've rebuilt worse." They tested the wings for the first time at dawn. The air shimmered with heat as Varath flexed, sending sparks of light through the seams. Dust rose, metal groaned, and for one breathless moment Terran thought the dragon might actually lift off. But then the frame buckled, and the great beast collapsed, shaking the ground. Terran cursed and ran to its side. "Too soon." "You're not ready. Damn it, you're going to tear it all apart again." Varath's chest heaved. "I felt it. The wind. Calling me." "Then make it wait," Terran snapped, his voice breaking. "You'll fly when you're strong enough. Not before." For a moment neither spoke. Then, to his surprise, the dragon laughed, a deep, thunderous sound that made the air tremble. Humans, always so fragile, yet always commanding the storm. "Yeah," Terran muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "That's kind of what we do." That night, as he sat by the dying fire, Terran caught something strange. The stars above were brighter than he remembered. They seemed watching, as if the heavens themselves were leaning closer, curious, and far beyond the clouds, unseen, something stirred. Ancient forces that had slept since the war's end, awakening at the sight of one dragon moving again, of one human daring to mend what the world had broken. The sky, it seemed, had not forgotten, and it was watching. The next morning, the horizon burned red with promise. Terran woke to the sound of shifting metal, the scrape of talons against rock. Varath was awake before him, testing the repaired wings again, slower this time, the massive membranes glinting like molten glass beneath the first touch of sunlight. The dragon's movements were more fluid now, the joints flexing without the grinding whine of strain. Terran sat up and rubbed his eyes, his body aching from too many sleepless nights. But when he saw those wings catch the wind and hold, even for a second, he felt something in his chest lift, a spark of belief he hadn't felt in years. "You're improving," he said, voice hoarse from disuse. Varath glanced at him with an expression somewhere between amusement and pride. "Your craftsmanship holds," the dragon replied. "I did not think human hands could rebuild what was born from the sky itself." Terran smirked, reaching for his tools. "You'd be surprised what desperation teaches us." He spent the day tuning the servos, recalibrating the neural link channels that allowed Varath's nerves to speak to the metal. It was delicate work. Too much current and the living tissue would burn, too little and the wings wouldn't move at all. The dragon endured it in silence, eyes half closed, great chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. When he finished, Terran stepped back, wiping grime from his face. "Try again," he said softly. The dragon's wings unfolded, wider than the hangar itself, casting an enormous shadow that swallowed him whole. Air rushed through the space, swirling dust and ash in spirals. The sound of it, pure, raw, powerful, made his heart hammer. For the first time the wings didn't falter. They held steady, trembling slightly, the metal humming with life. Varath's eyes glowed brighter. "It remembers," the dragon said, voice low. "The sky still remembers me." Terran felt a chill crawl up his spine. He didn't know why, but every time Varath spoke of the sky it felt as though something vast was listening. That night, when he stepped outside to cool his head, he saw strange lights moving far above, streaks of blue-white across the heavens that didn't look like stars or satellites. They moved in patterns, pulsing softly like eyes blinking in the dark. He told himself it was fatigue, or maybe atmospheric drones malfunctioning. But deep down, he knew it was something else. 3 nights later, they tried again. Varath crouched in the clearing behind the hangar, muscles coiled, repaired wings spread wide. Terran stood a few paces away, his heart pounding so hard he could barely hear himself think. "You're sure you're ready?" he asked. The dragon gave a low rumble, smoke curling from its nostrils. "You built me strong. I will not waste your gift." Terran stepped back, shielding his eyes as the wings began to move. Wind exploded outward in a shockwave, scattering tools, lifting sheets of metal into the air like leaves. For an instant the dragon hovered, massive, radiant, alive. The repaired membrane shimmered, the joints groaned, and then Varath rose, tearing free of the ground. Terran watched, unable to breathe. The sound of it was thunder, pure and triumphant. The dragon rose higher, circling once, twice, before dipping low again, landing with a tremor that shook the earth. When the dust cleared, Varath's eyes were glowing brighter than fire. "It is not perfect," the dragon said, panting. "But it is mine again." Terran grinned, despite the tears stinging his eyes. "Then I'd say it's a damn good start." They worked for days after that, strengthening the frame, smoothing the flight pattern, testing the balance between living muscle and forged alloy. Every flight drew more of those lights in the sky, faint and flickering like curious spirits. Terran tried not to think about it, but one evening he found the answer waiting on the horizon. An airship, dark and massive, descending through the clouds. His stomach dropped. He recognized the insignia even from a distance. The Sky Dominion. Raiders turned warlords, scavengers of both dragonkind and machine relics. If they found Varath here, they'd take him apart piece by piece, sell the scales, drain the blood for fuel, strip the bones for their fleets. He ran back to the hangar, shouting, "Varath! We've got company!" The dragon turned, eyes narrowing as the airship's engines rumbled closer. "They smell of smoke and greed," Varath growled. "They will not have me." Terran's mind raced. The hangar couldn't withstand a bombardment, and his weapons were laughable. "We can't fight them head-on," he said, grabbing what gear he could. "You're still not at full strength." Varath's tail lashed, scattering tools like toys. "Then I will fly." "You'll never outpace their sensors," Terran said. "Not unless—" He stopped mid-sentence, a wild idea forming. "Unless I make them think you're gone." He sprinted to the generator and overloaded the power grid, sending a massive burst of energy skyward, a false signal that mimicked an explosion. Within seconds, the Raiders' scanners would pick up the flare, read it as a crash. "They'll think you didn't make it," he said breathlessly. Varath stared down at him, and for a moment, something unreadable passed between them. An understanding deeper than words. "You would stay?" the dragon asked. Terran hesitated. He'd spent his whole life patching the broken, trying to make things fly again in a world that had forgotten how. Varath was proof that the sky wasn't lost forever. "Go," he said finally. "Someone has to remember what it's supposed to look like." The dragon lowered its head, eyes like molten suns. "You have given me back my wings, human. The sky will remember your name." Before Terran could reply, the dragon surged upward, wings slicing the air, rising through the smoke like a living storm. The airship's cannons roared, lighting up the sky, but Varath was already gone, a blur against the burning clouds. Terran watched until he vanished into the storm front, until the heavens swallowed him whole. When the raiders arrived, they found nothing but ruins and ash. Terran stood among the wreckage, his hands still warm from the generator's heat, his face smeared with soot. They questioned him, threatened him, tore through his workshop, but found no dragon. When they left, the night was quiet again, the stars burning brighter than ever. He sank to the ground, exhausted, staring at the sky. Somewhere up there, Varath was flying again, free, alive, carrying with him the last piece of hope humanity had forgotten to keep. And as Terran watched, one of those strange lights broke away from the rest, streaking across the heavens in a long silver arc. It wasn't a star. It was a dragon, wings glinting like lightning. He smiled, leaning back in the mud. "Guess you made it, old friend." And high above, in the boundless dark, the sky watched, silent, eternal, and for the first time in centuries, not empty. Terran didn't sleep for 2 days after Varath vanished into the storm. The hangar was half ruined. The generator melted into a tangle of slag. The ground scorched from the false signal blast. Every sound made him tense, half expecting the raiders to return and finish what they started. But no one came. The sky above was strange and quiet, holding its breath like it was waiting for something. Terran scavenged what was left, patched the roof, and tried to pretend the world hadn't changed. But it had. Every gust of wind felt different, charged with life again. Sometimes he'd swear he heard a whisper in the thunder, a low echo that sounded almost like Varath's voice. By the end of the week, he started seeing signs. Strange tracks scorched into the earth miles away, too large for any machine, and trails of metallic dust that shimmered faintly in the sun. He followed one of them one morning, hiking across the ridges that bordered the scrapyard until he reached the edge of the old skyfront cliffs. From there, the whole wasteland stretched below him, endless and gray, scattered with the bones of ships and cities that had tried to rise and fallen again. And above it, cutting through the smog like a blade of light, he saw a shadow moving. Enormous, graceful, alive. Varath. The dragon flew with power that seemed impossible for something made of half-flesh, half-broken metal. The repaired wings gleamed, casting fractured reflections across the storm clouds. Terran stood there until the shadow faded, his throat tight with something he couldn't name. Pride, maybe, or grief. For a moment he believed the sky had forgiven them, but the world below wasn't ready to let go of its ghosts. By the time he returned to the hangar, he wasn't alone. A figure waited near the edge of the wreckage. A woman in a long black coat, visor glasses gleaming faintly blue. She had the look of a Dominion scout, clean, deliberate, armed with purpose. "You're Terran Holt," she said, her voice clipped, professional. He froze, hand hovering near the plasma torch on his belt. "Who's asking?" "Captain Lyra Venn, Dominion Recon." She lifted her visor, and her eyes were not cold as he expected. They were searching, weary. "You were seen aiding a Class Tau entity during the storm." "Class Tau?" he asked, though he already knew what she meant. "Dragon." She nodded slightly. One was sighted. And then the sky changed. Her gaze flicked upward for a second as if she too had seen those strange lights. "We tracked the energy discharge to your location." "You didn't destroy it, did you?" Terran's jaw clenched. "You people came here to kill it." "I made sure you didn't." She studied him for a long, quiet moment. "You don't understand what you've done." "Oh, I think I do," he said. "I fixed what your war broke." For a second her composure cracked. "That war ended before either of us was born. The dragons aren't saviors, Holt. They're reminders. They were made to protect the world, but they nearly burned it clean." He turned away, jaw tight. "Funny thing about reminders. Sometimes they're all that keep us from forgetting what we were supposed to be." She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "The Dominion isn't the only one looking for it. There are others, independent fleets, old military orders. Something about that dragon's energy signature woke up a lot of systems that should have stayed buried." Terran frowned. "Systems?" Lyra hesitated. "The Sky Warden Protocol. It was a failsafe. Satellite AIs left over from the old era, designed to monitor aerial anomalies and enforce no-fly zones. But the last of them went dark nearly a century ago. Until now." Terran felt a chill crawl up his spine. "You're saying the sky is alive again?" "Alive and watching," she said quietly. "Something up there recognized what you rebuilt. The dragon's flight triggered an awakening signal. If those wardens interpret it as a return of hostile aerial species, they'll destroy it," he finished. She nodded. "And anything near it?" Terran looked toward the clouds, a heavy dread settling in his gut. The storm line pulsed faintly, threads of lightning weaving patterns too deliberate to be natural. "It wasn't weather. It was movement, surveillance." "I have to warn him," Terran said, turning to grab his pack. Lyra's expression hardened. "You can't. You'd never reach him in time. Whatever that creature is, it's drawing attention we can't control. The Dominion will launch an intercept mission at dawn." He looked her dead in the eye. "Then I leave before dawn." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, something conflicted flickering across her face. "You'd risk your life for it?" "I already did." She sighed, then stepped aside. "Then take this." She pulled a small data core from her coat and handed it to him. "Flight coordinates, storm signatures, last triangulated trace of the dragon. It's all I could pull before the Dominion encrypted the rest." "You didn't get this from me." He took it, nodding once. "Why help me?" Her voice softened. "Because once, when I was a kid, I saw a dragon fly over my city. It was beautiful. And when it fell, the sky never looked the same again. That was all." She turned and disappeared into the wasteland mist before he could say another word. By nightfall, Terran was flying. His glider, a patched-together relic of a warbird, screamed against the wind, its engines coughing smoke. But it held. He followed the coordinates Lyra had given him, racing toward the lightning horizon. The clouds ahead flickered in unnatural patterns, glowing with the ghost light of ancient satellites waking after centuries of sleep. And through it all, he could feel it, the pulse of something vast moving through the storm. When he broke through the first cloud bank, he saw them, great metallic shapes suspended in the stratosphere, motionless yet alive. Wardens. Their eyes, massive, artificial lenses, glowed with cold blue fire, scanning the skies like gods carved from forgotten code. And there, caught between their beams, was Verath. The dragon was flying hard, weaving through the clouds, wings flaring with plasma where Terran's grafts met scale. He was magnificent, and hunted. Every time one of those cold beams brushed against him, the air screamed with static. Lightning cannons fired from the warden's cores, arcing past him like divine judgment. Terran pushed his glider to its limit, engines howling. "Verath!" he shouted, even though he knew the wind would swallow his voice. But the dragon turned anyway. For a moment their eyes met across the storm. Man and myth, bound by something neither fully understood. "You should not be here," Varath's voice thundered in his mind, raw and bright as the lightning itself. "Neither should you," Terran yelled, gripping the controls. "They'll kill you if you stay." "They cannot kill the wind," the dragon said, even as another blast grazed his wing, sending molten fragments spinning away. "You're not just wind anymore. You're metal and blood. You can't outrun them forever." The dragon's wings faltered, then steadied. "Then tell me, mechanic, what does one do when the sky turns against them?" Terran's mind raced. The warden's energy beams weren't random. They were drawn to the dragon's core signature, the fusion matrix inside his rebuilt wings. "You're too bright," he said suddenly. "They see you because of me, because of what I fixed. If I can reroute your power flow, cut the signal, you would have to reach me." "I will." The dragon dove through a curtain of lightning, and Terran followed, the glider shaking violently as plasma streaks ripped past. The world became a whirl of fire and wind and metal, and in the heart of it, Terran saw what the old stories never told. The dragons weren't monsters. They were survivors. They'd fused with machines not to dominate the world but to endure it. Humanity had learned to build wings from watching them, and in doing so, forgotten to listen to the sky they both shared. He caught up to Varath near the storm's eye, grappling the glider onto one of the dragon's stabilizer struts. Wind tore at him, nearly flinging him into the abyss. "Hold steady," he shouted. Sparks danced as he tore open a panel on the dragon's wing, the heat so intense it blistered his skin. He rerouted power conduits by hand, fingers shaking, trying to break the warden's signal lock. "Almost got it." A beam of searing blue light hit them both. The glider exploded. Terran screamed as the world went white. When he opened his eyes, he was falling, weightless, spinning through smoke and wind. Below him, he saw Varath spiraling too, one wing ablaze, the other shattered where the beam struck. And then, impossibly, the dragon's voice returned, calm, resonant. "You gave me my wings, human. Now let me return the gift." A surge of wind caught Terran mid-fall. He was lifted, cradled by invisible currents, and then thrown clear just before the dragon struck the storm floor in a burst of blinding light. The warden's beams went dark. The sky went silent. When Terran hit the ground, the world was still. He dragged himself up, coughing, his ears ringing. Above, the storm was clearing, ripped open, showing stars brighter than he'd ever seen. And for the briefest moment, he thought he saw Varath there, vast and radiant, his wings whole again, not of metal, but of light. The dragon bowed once, slowly. Before dissolving into the sky, Terran fell to his knees. Around him the wind shifted, not empty, not cold, alive. The sky had changed forever. And for the first time since the war, it didn't look wounded. The days that followed were quiet in a way the world hadn't known for generations. The storms that had raged endlessly across the wastelands began to thin, leaving behind skies so wide and blue that people came out of their shelters just to stare at them. Old machines stopped their endless groaning. Static died in the air. It was as though something vast had finally unclenched its fist. Terran woke in the ruins of his glider, body bruised and burned, lungs raw from smoke. The wind whispered through the canyon, gentle now, almost tender. He lay there for a long time, watching the clouds drift above him, waiting for the pain in his chest to fade, but it didn't. The emptiness inside him was heavier than the sky. He called Varath's name once, hoarse and broken, but only the echo answered. He wasn't sure if the dragon was gone or changed into something beyond his reach. Yet the air itself felt alive, like the dragon's essence hadn't vanished at all, only become something greater. When he finally stood, he found the land around him scorched into strange, swirling patterns, as if the storm had painted the earth in runes of light. The soil shimmered faintly beneath his boots, humming with an energy that made his hair stand on end. He walked for miles through the aftermath of the battle, past fallen metal hulks that had once been the wardens. Their enormous frames were half buried in ash, eyes extinguished, wings frozen mid-beat. They looked like gods that had forgotten how to live. And in the middle of it all, near a ridge that still steamed from heat, he found a single scale. Varath's. It was massive, translucent, and humming with faint light. When Terran touched it, he felt warmth spread up his arm, and a whisper brushed his mind, faint but unmistakable. "The sky is not done with you." He sank to his knees, gripping the scale like a relic. "You're still here," he whispered. "Aren't you?" The wind moved through the canyons in answer, whistling low and hollow, yet somehow comforting. He carried the scale back to what was left of his workshop, determined not to let the last proof of Varath's existence fade into myth. In the weeks that followed, the world began to stir in ways no one could explain. Strange signals flickered across the Dominion's surveillance grids. Organic frequencies mixed with static, like heartbeats buried in the sky. Some pilots swore they'd seen wings made of light moving through the upper atmosphere. Scientists called it an anomaly. The people called it a miracle. The Dominion called it a threat. Terran kept quiet. He repaired his hangar, rebuilt his tools, and kept working the way he always had. Quietly, stubbornly, without praise. But word spread fast. A mechanic had restored flight to something that wasn't supposed to exist, and the sky itself had changed afterward. One afternoon, as he was refitting an old turbine, he heard the distant rumble of engines and looked up to see a small convoy of ships approaching. He expected raiders again. Instead, it was the Dominion, official ships bearing the crest of the capital. They landed just beyond the ridge, sleek and shining like new blades. Lyra was among them, stepping down first. Her coat was gone, replaced by the uniform of a commander. She looked older, sharper, but when she saw him, her expression softened. "You survived," she said simply. "Barely," he replied, wiping oil from his hands. "Guess I'm hard to kill," she smiled faintly. "You always were." Behind her, two engineers unloaded equipment. They weren't soldiers. No weapons, just scanners and survey gear. Lyra glanced at the sky, where faint currents of light still moved like veins behind the clouds. "The wardens are gone. Whatever happened up there reset their network. The Dominion doesn't know whether to call it a catastrophe or a rebirth." "Depends on how you look at it," Terran said. She stepped closer. "We need your help. There are changes, energy readings, new flight corridors forming in the atmosphere. Someone or something is rebalancing the upper airstreams. The old maps don't work anymore. It's as if the sky's learning how to breathe again." Terran's throat tightened. "It's him," he said softly. "Varath's doing it. He's still out there somewhere." Lyra didn't argue. "Maybe. Whatever the case, the Dominion wants to understand it before someone else does. There are people who see this as a chance to rebuild the old war machines, to reclaim the power the dragons had." "Of course they do," Terran muttered. "They always want to rebuild what nearly destroyed them." "Not everyone," she said quietly. "Some of us think there's another way. We could build a sky where both wings, human and dragon, belong again." He looked at her, really looked, and saw she wasn't the cold soldier he'd met weeks ago. The sky had changed her too. "You think they'll let you try that?" She gave a small, tired smile. "They'll have to. The storms are gone. The old rules don't apply anymore." That night, after the Dominion crew had set up camp, Terran walked out alone to the ridge. The sky above shimmered faintly, painted with threads of soft gold and blue like veins of living light. He held Varath's scale up to the glow, and it caught the colors, pulsing as though it recognized the air. He closed his eyes and spoke softly. "You said the sky wasn't done with me. What did you mean?" The wind shifted, warm and heavy, and a familiar presence filled his mind. Not words this time, but feeling. Pride, gratitude, and something like farewell. He saw flashes behind his eyelids, a vast expanse of light, dragons made of wind and energy soaring through currents that bent around them like rivers of fire. At the center of it, Varath turned once, great wings unfurled, looking down at him from beyond the edge of the storm. "You fixed more than wings, human. You reminded the sky what freedom felt like." Terran felt tears sting his eyes. "You said the sky remembers my name." It does. When he opened his eyes, the vision was gone, but the clouds above moved differently now. Slower, smoother, like something alive stretching after a long sleep. The Dominion scanners would call it atmospheric stabilization. He knew better. The sky had learned to heal. Months passed. The world began to rebuild in strange and beautiful ways. Airships could fly higher than ever before, powered by clean wind currents that seemed to guide rather than resist. The storms that had once plagued the trade routes dissolved, and every now and then a pilot would report seeing a streak of light, a shape like a dragon, luminous and silent, gliding just above the clouds before vanishing again. The Dominion never confirmed those sightings, but the people believed. Terran stayed in his hangar, though it had grown busier now. Travelers came from distant cities asking for repairs, advice, stories. They wanted to know about the dragon who had once fallen from the sky and the mechanic who dared to rebuild it. He never told them everything. He'd just smile faintly, hand back their repaired ship, and say, "Sometimes the sky just needs someone to listen." One evening, Lyra returned. She brought data maps showing how the new jet streams moved, forming spirals that mirrored the shape of dragon wings. "We call them Verath currents," she said. "They're changing everything about flight." Terran studied the patterns, feeling the quiet pride rise in him again. "He'd like that," he murmured. "He always said the sky had a memory," Lyra nodded. "The Dominion is opening a new academy. Aerial research, mechanics, aerobiotics. They want you to head it." He looked out toward the horizon, where the sun was bleeding into gold. "I'm not a leader." "You don't have to be," she said gently. "Just keep doing what you did before. Teach us how to listen." For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he said, "I'll think about it." That night, the wind rose again. Not violent, but playful, dancing through the broken hangar doors. He stood outside, eyes lifted. Far above, beyond the reach of any machine, a shape crossed the moon. Vast, gleaming, silent. The light glinted off its wings, not metal now, but pure starlight. Terran smiled. "Still flying, old friend?" The dragon tilted its wings as if in answer, then vanished into the clouds, leaving only a faint echo of thunder and the taste of rain. In the years that followed, humanity learned to share the sky again. Cities built floating platforms powered by the new winds. Children grew up tracing dragon shapes in the clouds, believing they were real. And when storms came, people no longer hid in fear. They stood outside and listened, because they said the thunder sounded like a dragon laughing. Terran grew older, his hands still stained with oil, his hair streaked with silver. He never stopped fixing what was broken. He rebuilt wings for gliders and windships, for machines and men alike. But sometimes, when he worked late into the night and the forge burned low, he'd feel the air stir behind him and hear a whisper in his mind, soft as a heartbeat. "Well done, human." He'd smile without looking up. "You still keeping watch?" And the wind would laugh, warm and endless. On the last day of his life, when the sunset painted the horizon in gold and crimson, they said he was seen walking to the cliff beyond his hangar, the one where he'd first seen Verath take flight. The wind was calm that evening, almost reverent. He stood there for a long time, his silhouette small against the burning sky. Then, as the last light faded, something vast and radiant descended from the clouds. Wings of light, eyes like dawn. Some swore they saw the dragon bow to him. Others said he simply stepped forward, smiling, and vanished into the wind. When the dawn came, the sky was clear, and the first rays of sunlight broke across a new world. Quiet, golden, alive. And high above, where the air shimmered brightest, two shapes flew side by side, one forged of light, one shaped like a man, both leaving trails that burned like hope across the morning sky. The mechanic who had once restored a dragon's wings had finally found his own. And the sky, vast and eternal, was watching, still and always, remembering.